everybody, so this is a bit a special video. I wanted, since the ID book is now gold and we had the point update and so on, so it's going to be the final version of it. I wanted to, for myself, have another look at the book, just to check again what are the interesting options, in my opinion. What are the possibilities that the book gives? What are maybe some options that are less interesting? Wanted to share this with you. I thought this might be interesting to listen to for some players, especially thinking about the ID player that maybe struggle a little bit about what should I pick, what is good, what are maybe some synergies that I missed while reading the book or building my list. So I thought I will go through the book and just stop at some interesting things that I want to highlight a little bit. So I hope this will be interesting. This will be a little bit of rambling, not perfectly structured, but I hope this will still be helpful. And for non-ID player, might be also a way to understand a bit more about the details, the weaknesses, maybe the strengths and also the weaknesses of the book, maybe. I don't know. I hope this will be helpful. So let's scroll through the book. So the first things that I wanted to point out is obviously incendiary is one of the key features of the book, one of the key rules. Basically, where do I see potential with incendiary? First of all, getting reroll to wound on magic missiles. I think this is really interesting. If there is one army that should be playing pyro, it should be the ID, because we get access to reroll to wound magic missiles. So I think if you create a list around this synergy, it can be really good. I experienced some of it during last ETC when I faced the Polish ETC ID ETC player, who was using that quite a lot with a Master Pyro and some token to have reroll to wound, and basically was able to kill something like 7 or 8 bruisers in one phase between this and the shooting. And yeah, this surprised me a lot. I didn't expect so much output. So I think here there is a very good potential for range damage by using Incendiary token. Also, not forget, Incendiary could be really good with shooting attack, especially thinking at Nafta Thrower, because they are flammable. They are flaming attack. So if you get to reroll to wound a weapon that is hitting on 2+ all time, this gets really interesting, because you can get, it's very reliable. That is something that I like about the Nafta Thrower, and with reroll to wound, it's reliable to hit, first of all, and it will get reliable to wound with the Incendiary token. So I think, Incendiary token is definitely one of the key synergy that is really good in the book. Also, you can use that for some of alchemy spell, thinking especially about Quicksilver Lash, but mostly thinking about Pyro. I think this has huge potential, and also for some of the shooting attack. Also, you can use Flaming Sword and then shoot at something and get reroll to wound. So there are definitely a lot of potential with this. My main source of Incendiary token is in core, from Vassal unit with both. I think this is the best way to get them. The Vassal Cav is also decent to put some token, but you don't have a lot of shots. If you move, it's going to be 6 up, so you can't rely on doing something on hitting, and therefore you cannot rely on that to put some token. But definitely for me, it's from core. I think the Vassal Slingshot has no big interest, because if you can put token from core, then why would you pay something from special to do that? Infernal Dwarves. So couple of things here. It allows you, first of all, as you saw in my list, I like to play most of the time with a mage general that can move freely where he needs to. Meaning with Infernal Brand commanding presence 6 inch, to insignificant model, it allows you to have a lot of mini commanding presence bubble within your army if you play enough of Infernal Brand, and therefore you don't need your general to be at a particular position. Can be sometimes tricky, because it's sometimes hard to position a chaff unit and be within 6 of an Infernal Brand unit without giving any overrun or stuff after the chaff. So sometimes it is a bit tricky. It's not always easy. But definitely this allows you more freedom to spread a bit more over the board. So I think it's interesting, and this is key in some of the action. So you have this synergy between the unit, for example, thinking about Kadim family. They have low leadership. low discipline value, sorry. So if you get something like a Lamassu behind the Kadim Titan, this gets really interesting because it can benefit from some of the spell, and it can mostly benefit from the good discipline value, which can be key thinking about March check, steadfast, stuff like that. So definitely an important factor in the list, and something to keep in mind when you play. Always keep in mind this check 6-inch, always have something in range to make sure that you can take advantage from that, and you have no unit that are, I'm thinking mostly about vassals and slaves that are very sensitive to leadership because they have low discipline. Basically, yeah, not forget about that for this core unit. And then regarding the steadfast, so this is something for the dwarf unit, so to say. So unit that have a couple of ranks can be interesting. So if you get charged, basically that's one of the key strengths I think of the book, is the fact that you have unit that can get charged by anything, pretty much everything, and can hold. And I think that's one of the key features. That's also something that I've been using in most of my ID list, is the fact that I can push with some unit that can get charged, that can hold with a high likelihood of holding, and then I set up enough counter charge to basically make sure I get rid of the unit that charged me. Obviously I lost a couple of bodies in the unit that was charged, but at the end of the day I still have 2 units and he has none left. That was one of the mechanic that I use the most with the book. Okay, let's move on. So I don't stop on stuff that I don't have any particular comment to make. I think the rest is pretty obvious. The purpose of this video is not to explain rules, because you should know most of them if you watch my ID battle reports and also some review that I made. So it's not the idea of repeating the rule, it's more like to explain some potential. Volcanic Embrace, I changed a little bit, so yeah. Quicksilver Lash, I think it's very reliable, it's good. I love the way it works at the moment. It's still quite good against even character with Basalt Infusion, you can do well. So I love the way it works at the moment for Volcanic Embrace. And definitely a huge potential is the fact that you can get Toxic Attack reroll to wound with Flaming. So basically if you cast the spell from Occultism that you can get either with an Apprentice Occultism or with the Lamassu, at least an Apprentice or something better, but if you cast that spell on a Volcanic Embrace model or model part, basically it gets Flaming as well, so you get Toxic, Flaming, so you can get reroll to wound Toxic. And I think this is very, very strong. It's not always easy to put in place because it's not an easy spell to cast on another model, especially if you don't have a +1. It's like a 9+, if I remind correctly. So it's not so easy to cast, but definitely the potential is huge, because getting AP 10 reroll to wound Flaming can be very scary. So this is definitely something that I'm trying to exploit. I didn't use it a lot until now. Didn't have a lot of occasion to use it, but definitely something that I intend to use more, because I think this is really strong, especially now that the Toxic Breath has been moved to spell 1. I think there is more potential to use it basically more often. About our shooting weapons, something that I wanted to mention, so the core shooting weapon, so to say, or at least the one that you can access from core and also in special for the blunderbuss. But basically, yeah, you can see it's short range. So there is sometimes the incentive, or most of the time the incentive, to not, if you start basically with ID, you are out of range with almost everything, because it's very easy to minimize. Either you're out of range because of the movement and the range of the weapon, or you're out of range because it's quite easy to put you out of range because you don't shoot that far away. I'm thinking about all the mobile shooting. For the stationary shooting, it's completely another story, because they have bigger range since it doubles the range, so it's completely different. But with everything that moves and shoots, basically you have this problem that if you start, it's easy to put you out of range, but still it's providing a zone where if you come within, thinking about Bastion, yeah, it's still very scary. But it's something to keep in mind when you play this unit, or especially a lot of them. You don't necessarily want always to start the game. NAFTA, this is key, having march and shoot, so it's not a big range. 12, 24 on the stationary model, but 12 especially. I've tried it on the engine. I thought that was really good because you can march 10 and then shoot 12, and especially the short range, it's 6, so it's move 10, shoot 6, 16 inch. If you go within, it's strength 5, AP 2, multiple wound D3. This is scary. And like I said before, I love the fact that it's very reliable. It's 2+. So you can expect it really to do something. You can plan according to the fact that most very, very likely you're going to hit. And I think this is really nice to have. Obviously, this can be a good zoning element. Basically, you can put also flamethrower in a gunnery team and just be a threat of saying, I'm going to march and shoot at you. For example, I don't know, in some blunder. Problem is with blunder, when you put NAFTA on a gunnery within the unit, you just lose blunder shot, which is a bit annoying. Maybe there is some potential with the reform banner, but I'm not so convinced. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, definitely the fact that there is march and shoot makes it really a threat range where the opponent has to think twice before moving within the zone and have a good plan, because if he gets shot multiple times at short range, this hurts. So this is the fact why, yeah, obviously flamethrower is decent from on the big base. It's quite cheap, but I like the fact that you can put it on something more mobile, because then you can threat with march and shoot. And I think this is kind of nice because the short range gets very, very nice, and against more model than the long range, which is especially good against big unit. So it's nice zoning threat, but it's different. It's more sensitive. It's a bit different, but still quite cheap. Rocket, yeah. What I love about the rocket is the spike potential. Basically, the opponent, when you're moving, I've seen myself, I've been rating some matchup when I've been facing rocket battery. When I look at this list and try to rate the matchup as an Ogre Cat player with everything in my army that being multi-wound, you always have a way of thinking to say, if this spikes, I mean, this can do an enormous amount of damage. And this is something I like, because in practice there are going to be a lot of time where you are going to get disappointed by this weapon because it doesn't hit that well, due to cover, long range, not so easy to get a lot of shot through. And still, if you hit, then you need to wound. So if you check, most monsters or stuff that are nice to shoot at are going to be resilience 5 or 6. So it's not a guarantee that you can wound. And then there are going to be maybe still an armor save or what save. So you're not sure at all that you're going to do anything. But still, the opponent has to take into account that if the dice go hot, it can do basically an enormous amount of damage and can change the course of the game, the path of the game, which is huge. And this is why I like this weapon. And also the fact that you hit 4 times instead of just 1 for cannon, for example. Even if you're less carry than cannon, less scary, so to say, the single hit is less scary. The fact that you shoot 4 times, you can still rely on the fact that you're going to hit at least once. And against things like chariot, stuff like that are resilience 4 or less, you can rely on doing something. So yeah, I really love this weapon. Especially, I think it's decent on gunnery because it's so cheap. Then it's just scary. It's just, you can just buy that to say, if you come within 18 plus my movement, basically, if I roll good, I can also pay, for example, for an engineer to be a bit more reliable. But if my dice are good, it can get very scary. So it can just for 150 something points, it can create a zone where a big target will not be willing to move within, which can be already enough for this amount of points. And also I like it on the engine with current price, because yeah, the fact that you can move and shoot with that, you can somehow compensate for the fact that you are impacted by cover, which is nice. Also, it's still a decent weapon on the big base because you get accurate. So again, I think all 3 options are decent. Titan Mortar, I know that it's very popular for a lot of ID players. I think due to the versatility, you get strength 8 in the middle, which is quite good. It gets strength 4, AP1 for the rest. It's quick to fire, so it's not bad at all. I haven't been that much of a fan because, yeah, I don't know why, but I prefer to pick a weapon for particular use because definitely it's less good than the rockets against Silgan model, and it's less good than the flamethrower against big unit. But it's useful in all the matchups. So you have it's like an in-between weapon. I haven't been in a position in my list to really pick it to say I want something very versatile. I have preferred to say, okay, I want to get a rocket battery because I need something against big targets in one part of my list and so on. So until now I didn't play it at all, I guess, but I know why. I understand why it's popular. I think it's very versatile, and and maybe also it depends on the type of list that you build. If you build something that it's maybe slightly more conservative or defensive, maybe with less close combat than most of the lists that I built with ID, I understand why you would pick that, because you would want a list that is very solid, maybe a bit more defensive, and therefore to have weapons that are good in all range damage, weapons that are good in all matchup, because in team tournament we are not going to pair you against very perfect target if you specialize too much on a type of weapon, being against mass or against big targets. So I think that's the main reason why we see so many of them. But definitely all three weapons have some attractivity. I think they are all not bad at all on paper. Infernal weapon, I think I missed a little bit the fact that it gave before magical attack. I think that was nice, just as a flavor thing, but that might be a detail. Hereditary is very good. I use it most of the time because it can give you this juicy incendiary marker from magic phase as well. Can be very useful. The debuff, CC debuff, is also offensive defensive debuff, is also nice, because you can basically hit better, and you have some other spells that are making a similar effect, so you get some redundancy in your spell selection with Deceptive Glamour and Rot Within that I didn't use much, but at least with Deceptive Glamour. But yeah, all three spells, I built a list a couple of times ago that had access to all three spells, and it was quite, in some matchup, it was definitely good. If you can cast 3 of them, in some matchup it changed a lot. But definitely, I think it has I think it's a well-balanced spell that is very interesting, because you have the small version, which has a big range, so you are always in a position to cast it, and the bigger version that gets some additional debuff, but then it's short range. But I really love this hereditary spell and pick it most of the time. About item very quickly, yeah, the fact that they set the strength to 6 in the last update basically allow more builds with Torque Ritual Overlord, I guess, is the main guy that took advantage from that, because Commissioner had already access to strength 6 with Infernal Weapons, so it was already an option to bring a mobile Onyx Core on the list. But here, yeah, definitely the Overlord being on a Great Bull, on a Bull, or on Torque Ritual can have strength 6, and I think this is a good buff for the Overlord mainly. Other than that, yeah, I think this is mainly for him a big buff, so we might see, it might be a good way to encourage the Overlord to be picked a bit more. The rest, what I wanted to say, yeah, Blaze of Protection, I think this is a good way to basically make an infantry character being a 1-up armor save and still be able to pick the 2-hand weapon, which is nice, but it's maybe slightly expensive. But I think it's kind of a nice weapon. Worth mentioning that the change to Bull of Shamut and Lamassu makes Bull of Shamut basically makes it possible now to pick it on a bull, but I don't think this is an interesting option, because you don't have the possibility to boost your armor save to 2-up if you pick that. And I think it's better to have 2-up armor save than that. The icon, I think this is nice because it allows the list to still pick a lot of Volcanic Embrace and Flaming Attack in the list, but at the same time not be too sensitive against War Save against fire, which is something really nice in the list. So I think this is a nice item. I haven't used too much the banner of the Twice banner, didn't try it yet. I don't know. seems very tricky to use. I don't see the real potential in it. It's still quite expensive. You still, basically the main problem with this item is the fact that you can get charged at, if you have a big frontage, let's say 10 guys in the front because you want to get your 20 blunderbuss shot, and then something charge you. If it's a single model, yeah, okay, then the banner is very useful because then you can reform, but even with blunderbuss, it's not that interesting because you don't have the -1 to hit for stand and shoot, so you don't get the benefit of that. It's just the benefit to reform. Is it that good? I don't know. I think you need maybe a mix of flintlock with some gunnery, and you try to be wide and get max shoot, and you want to reform, but still it's very situational because if you get multi-charge, then you still have to keep everybody in base contact because of the reform rule, so you cannot really take a huge advantage of that. So I think it's too situational to be picked, to be honest. Mask of Ages, why this is an interesting item, in my opinion. First of all, it's quite good because you get Ages 5 up against special attack, magical attack, fear, and you reroll to hit. So this is not bad for an infantry model. Definitely something that I would pick in most of my Vizier and Overlord build. And also what I like is the fear factor. Because fear is kind of an issue. If you don't play an Overlord, basically, without the mask, in my opinion, you cannot feel the big unit of, let's say, Warrior with great weapon, big unit of Citadel Guard with no matter which weapon, because you cannot rely, at least I wouldn't rely on passing an 8 rerollable steadfast check against a fear-causing model. I wouldn't, because if you lose your game on that, yeah, it's annoying. So basically this is a way, I think you have two ways to if you want to play this kind of unit, you have two ways to make that possible. The first one is the Overlord because of Leadership 10. And the second one is playing, for example, a BSB with Mask of Ages, and then you can get him in the unit and basically get some immunity against fear. Also, the Bastion is a good way to protect them against fear. So you have a couple of ways to do that, but other than that, personally, I wouldn't pick such a unit. Yeah, and so like I said, for the Overlord, I think this is one of the main reason also to pick him. Is it allows some other build. The infantry version, personally, it's not to my taste. I've never been a fan of a fighty character that has so few movement abilities. I think in too many situations you won't be able to do much, and to get a lot of points with him on foot, at least. That's my opinion. The mounted option, Torque Ritual, has been cheaper. It is a decent option. I have some experience with him. I have been playing him in the past. I found it to be a bit fragile with only 3 health points. Basically, if you go on your own, a Mark IV Doom, a Bolt Thrower, there are a lot of things that can one-shot you, and this is a bit too scary, in my opinion. But this is a decent character, I think, on Torque Ritual. It's not bad at all as a character, but I found him to be sometimes a bit fragile, and yeah, if it's your general, yeah, if you lose him on something stupid, it's a bit annoying. Bull of Shamut, I've been playing it in the old show last year, I guess it was. Also very fragile. 4 wounds, resilience 5. This can die pretty easily, so I'm not so convinced about a fighty character with not so many wounds, not so much resilience. Not sure this can work, to be honest with you, at a high level, at a competitive level at least. Great Bull of Shamut, I've been looking at it. I think this is not bad at the moment, the way it's priced, because you can pay for it. So it's 610. You pay then 30 for MR2, and then I would personally pick, obviously, Onyx Core, and second one most likely Eye of the Bull, because then in the phase where you move around, you can still shoot. So I think this would be my pick. So for slightly, I think it's like 700, so not much more than 700, maybe slightly more. You get a good Wrecking Ball that has a huge potential in close combat. It's 200 points more than a Kadim Titan, but you can fly. I think this is not bad at all. It can be a decent choice. if I would play him that way, most likely maybe not as a general. Also point-wise, it's similar to the Griffin that was played before the update by Highborn Elves, so it's not that much point to have 700 for a fighty character, but maybe he's just too fragile to some spam of light damage to really be effective. I don't know. I have to try him once or twice to see what happens, but yeah, I'm not a huge fan of expensive fighty lord that have one only purpose in the list is to go in combat to get points, because if they don't go in combat, they are there for pretty much nothing. Prophet. So yeah, we have the 4 church. What do I want to say? I said before, I think all 3 are decent choice as pass. I think a non-foot prophet would be between alchemy, pyro, definitely occultist. For me, it's for a mounted prophet. So apprentice is quite good. Adept is decent as well. Master is also, I think master it's mainly great bull, maybe small bull, but mostly great bull of Shamut. So not that often. On foot, I don't see really it being so effective for the price you pay. On foot, yeah, mainly it's between alchemy and pyro. Also Essence of Free Mind being quite good, I think, because the spell 5 and 6 from this boss lore are not that crazy good. Depends a little bit of what's in your list, but definitely it's a decent choice. So I think we have access to the 3 of them have some interest. It depends a lot on the how you build your list basically, and is your prophet going to be on foot in a unit where he can cast spell all game long, or he's going to move on some kind of mounts, and then you want to have another setup. Yeah, so if you basically put him in a unit and you want him to not be to be in danger of in combat and also snipes, basically you like to pick Logar. If you want him to be very effective with range damage, thinking mainly about Pyro Master on a seat in a unit of Vassal, for example, that is Ashuruk, basically can cast very good spell with roll to wound, and if you need to get some reroll in combat, you can switch to Alchemical Fire. But this gets very expensive. You can see here, it's 100 points more for that combo. So it's quite expensive. It's definitely very good, but it gets to a price that it's maybe, yeah, you need to think twice before investing in that. Nezip Cash on the Bastion. Personally, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that at all, because if you lose your Bastion, and I still think that the best way to use the Bastion is to, yeah, put him in danger, basically. You need to push with it to get in range to shoot. Do you want to lose at the same time a Prophet? Not sure. Maybe if it's an Apprentice, yeah, maybe. But nothing else than that. I think I definitely prefer the Bastion on his own. And if you lose it, you don't care because it doesn't hurt your magical setup. Shamut is still one of the favorite of mine, because I like my prophet to be mobile and still be able to fight a little bit with the bull that we have access to. Obviously that it has got to a point where it gets quite expensive, but you need to pay a price to have a very versatile model that is very good from range and also quite good in combat. The Vizier, yeah, it's the cheap BSB price. Worth mentioning, the Torque Ritual option is very cheap, I think, because your Vizier is still quite cheap. You can build decent fighty BSB for 350-ish, which is not bad. So definitely the Vizier is a good BSB choice, and also not necessary on foot. On foot, obviously, you have a lot of items that you can pick to make him quite solid. Personally, I prefer to have my character mobile, but I think here all options are quite decent. Also worth mentioning that you can build some good cowboy with the Vizier on the Bull of Shamut for 285. Then you can pay something to improve the armor, and between 315, 20 and 350 you get some nice cowboy that can move quite well and be quite good in combat. So I think this is also a good choice. Definitely in a cowboy function, I prefer him on the Bull of Shamut rather than Torque Ritual, because you get another 4 attack from the bull. What a build that I've been looking at would be a pet weapon, Hero's Art, Essence of Mithril, which would be 220, 385 I think this is not bad. Pet weapon, 385. So for this price, I think you get 5 attack strength 5 plus 4 attack strength 5. This is not bad at all. But definitely you need to compare that with, for example, a giant that is similar in price but has a lot more health point. You are less scared from shooting when you play him. So at the moment, I've been rather interested in picking a giant rather than him on the small bull, because I don't like that much to have such a not too expensive cowboy that you can sacrifice, but still against War Machine there will be an incentive to hide him a little bit, because you don't want to lose him straight away, where Giant could basically move freely and don't care about 1 or 2 cannon shots. Commissioner, yeah, this has been my go-to BSB choice, because I like my BSB to be quite to be able to play on his own, to be able to play some part of games in a cowboy, and also I like the fact that you can play either in a unit where you can be bodyguard. If there is not much range damage and you don't need bodyguard, you can move him on his own. I love this flexibility between being a cowboy sometimes, being in a bodyguard unit sometimes. It's very helpful. And this has been, for me, one of the units that I like a lot. Obviously, it's quite expensive. If you build him, it's around 450, so like 100 points more than him. Not particularly much better in close combat than the Vizier, but you pay the price for Fear, which is, like I said before, one of the key elements, and Bodyguard, obviously. And the fact that you can have some impact, stomp, I love this model, but it gets quite expensive. What I like about him is you can make him to have a role similar to an Overlord, but according to me, since you need in most of your list a BSB, the fact that you can make him quite fighty makes it an Overlord-like type of model. Basically, it fulfills a similar role to the Overlord, not as good as the Overlord for the price, definitely, but you have a BSB. So I've loved this the fact that he brings all these roles in the list. I've loved that until now, even if it's quite expensive. Conjurer, yeah, it's a cheap mage. Access to witchcraft, which is quite good for ID, I must say. Pyro, like I said before, also good. So it's a good way to basically, if you pay an expensive caster like the one we mentioned before, Ashuruk, on a seat, full option, then to still complement a little bit your magic phase with something else, some buffs and a movement spell. I think witchcraft can be really good for that, for example. And the Adept Pyro is always also a good choice. And I've been using him as well as an emergency chaff for the Adept with 15. I think it's still decently priced, can do magic most of the game, and then in the late stage of the game, if you need a chaff piece, you can use him. I've loved that until now. Lamassu, yeah, definitely not bad for the price, especially since the update where all Adept went up in price, because he didn't move since he was a conclave. Not a conclave, but a special Adept basically, because he has an Adept as an upgrade. He's basically starting as an Adept, so it's definitely a very good complementary piece if you have a damage base magic phase, being Occultism, Pyro mostly. I think this is a perfect complementary piece because you can get buffs. He brings buff to the list, and this is something that you miss if you play Occultism and Pyro. So I think this is a very good complementary piece for that. Fight, is not that fighty, but still can provide some combo charge, take some challenge. It's still 4 attack strength 5, so it's not bad at all. Okay, I've been already talking quite a lot. Kalim Chariot, I mentioned that before. I love the Apprentice on the Kalim Chariot of Occultism because you get Toxic Breath, it's quite cheap, and it's a decent character. The main issue is since he lost, in a couple of versions ago, he lost the Lugar guy on top, you don't have that many attack and impact to hold against static res, which can be kind of an issue, and I would still think that in most of your lists, if I pick him, I would pick another Kalim Chariot to be able to put them together if I need to have a unit that can face also bigger unit. The Bull, yeah, you know, I love them. Bastion, okay. Warrior, so like I said before, the large unit for me are only playable if you have either Overlord or something that immunes you to fear, because I wouldn't like to really gamble on a steadfast check on 8 rollable. Blunder with shield, are we going to see more of them without a Bastion? I don't think so. I think I would still pick Blunder only with a Bastion, for me at least. I don't like the idea of having to play them very wide. Citadel, are we going to see more? It's still quite expensive. Small unit of Flintlock are still decent. What I've liked about Core, I have to say Core is always something that I have a hard time to really find the right solution. This is most of the time the part of the list where I'm struggling the most and where I'm making tests between multiple core options to see which one is the best for the list. I have to say that, because it's kind of hard to say, do I want to put a unit of 20 spear or a unit of 40 vassal levies with spear? Do I want my shooting being flintlock, or do I want my shooting to be more bows or blunder with a bastion? What do I want to do with my core? So this is always something I'm struggling, which is maybe a good sign that the internal balance in the ID core is not bad at the moment. Maybe. Could be the case. I'm always struggling to see what's the best of the best core. What I've been playing quite a lot, that has been in most of my list, has been the levies, standard musician, bow, paired weapon with a relentless banner, because I love the fact that you can get some incendiary token in the early stages of the game, and then you can be used as chaff. It's not the best piece of chaff, because it's 15 and it's an infantry unit, so it can struggle to move around to chaff properly. But still, when you see the price of the other available chaff in the book, this is one of the best options to get some chaff ability in the book. And I think we can live with the fact that not having so good chaff in the list, since you should have in your ID list at least one, maybe two, I would say two, unit that should be able to be charged. So I think it's not mandatory to have a very good or high amount of piece of chaff in an ID list. That's why I've been picking this unit that are quite versatile, not a design piece of chaff, but can be chaff in some case if needed. But still, you give away 250, which is quite a lot for a chaff piece when you sacrifice them. The slaves, I think they are decent for the price. Like, I've been trying to use them, unit of 40 with parry, Res 440 for 210, you cannot do much wrong for this price. Unit of 20, these are a couple of extra not free, but drops. Sometimes I've been seeing especially my list are often quite tiny with expensive models or expensive units. And since I play that, sometimes I've been struggling in deployment stage to have unit to delay a little bit the deployment and the time of the deployment when I want to drop some more valuable pieces. So to have one or two in the list, I think is not a bad choice to finish the core. I'm still a bit mixed between small units, cheap, and throw them in the middle of the board if needed, or bigger unit and try to hold some of the unit, but it's never guaranteed, because same problem as before. Without an overlord and without an overlord, basically you cannot rely on the fact that they are going to hold. So I think I would rather pick smaller unit. Incarnate, the main problem is the movement, lateral movement, no musician, so can be an issue, but they're definitely good in combat. We saw that in my last battle report against Red Elves. This is still a very solid unit combat-wise. So it's just hard for me to accept the fact that they have been changed design-wise from one of the units that had the best lateral movement in the book, more or less, or one of the best lateral movement in the book, to the unit that has the weakest or the least lateral movement in the book. This is sometimes hard to accept, but the fact that they have movement 6 swift ride is always going to be appealing to me, because I think this is allows you to charge far away, to be kind of scary. Volcanic is good. You have basically the debate in some of the list is between 5 incarnate with a champion that are less expensive than a Titan or a Titan. And I think in a good amount of the list, I would pick 5 of them instead because of the more health points, more attacks, so you're less likely to die to stuff like War Machine, Divination, and so on. So I think they are a decent choice, but yeah, they are less the go-to special units that we had before. Canim Chariot, I've been a bit disappointed of my tests. They are not bad. They are not bad at all, but for the price that you pay, basically the main issue for me is 5 up, 4 wounds. You can die to anything at any point, which has been for me a problem in my experience with them. So I wouldn't pick them at the moment, but I don't think they are bad for the price. You get a good amount of damage. They have flammable attacks, so you can get a good reroll to wounds on quite a lot of attacks. So a single chariot could be able to hold a big unit without problem with this amount of attack and flammable attack. So it's not a bad choice. But I don't know why, just the fact that it can die easily makes it hard to consider for me, because if I put something in a place to do a roll and then it dies quickly, I need to change my plan. And this is something I don't like most of the time. Immortals, I'm not a big fan of infantry out of core, I must say. You've seen that. I haven't been using much of these units. I don't think they're bad. For example, unit of 15 to 90, great weapon. It's not bad at all. Battle focus, bodyguard, infernal brand. It's not bad. The rules that they have, it's not a bad unit at all. But this hasn't been my. Like I said at the beginning, I like that my unit out of core have a good movement, advanced move. So this has been for me a bit of an issue. The fact that you don't have a good projection. We haven't seen much of bigger unit of Immortals, so I think maybe this type of Death Star is a bit dead. I don't know. I've been also using in the past year sometimes unit of 15 with an Overlord just to say I'm bodyguard. Can be very strong on secondary objective, I guess. If your Overlord is strong enough, that's the main question. And the main issue as well. I don't think at the moment in the meta the Overlord is strong enough to really play this type of unit effectively, but we have seen people just spamming, playing 2 or 3 unit of 15 Immortal for the price. It's decent output. Lugars have been down in price, and definitely to play this type of role I would play Lugar instead. Yeah, unit of 20-ish with great weapon. I mean, it's good output for the price you pay. I mean, 2 attack strength 6 each. Flaming can be taken away, just you can pay on them the icon, and then you can just take away flaming when you need to. So it's definitely a decent unit, moves really well. Same march rate as Anointed and Incarnate, which is funny. Obviously the advance is lower, but I see why a lot of people pick them, just not to my taste, but I think they are a good choice. I would say better than the Immortals at the moment, in my opinion, at least in middle to big size unit. And Forcers, I don't believe in them. I think the fact that they don't cause fear is a problem. Still they're cheap, but yeah, it can die. They don't have that, not more armor than the Anointed. I don't just think that for similar price, the Anointed do better. What I would consider with them is still a unit of 5 paired weapon musician, 215, can chaff, can play for secondary objective, does a huge amount of attack against small targets that don't strike well. For example, thinking about a strength 3 unit, you can hit them with 15 attack, strength 4, offensive 5, plus 5 impact hit. This is potentially 20 hits if you strike before or at least same time. So potentially it can wipe some units pretty easily for a cheap price. So I think I've been using once of such unit in the past, and I just don't see where it fits at the moment in my list, but definitely something that I always keep in mind in case I want a versatile unit that could be scoring or chaffing or killing some of the opponent's chaff. I think they're also good at that, but I wouldn't consider at the moment some of the bigger unit. Anointed, yeah, I've been playing them quite a lot. They've been increasing in price, so I think they are better balanced. The comparison between them, Incarnate, Lugar has been closer at the moment. So I think they are better balanced, but yeah, still I love it. I think Infernal Weapon Shield is way too expensive to be considered. I think nobody's playing that at the moment. 18 points per model to get that. I think everybody is just going for paired weapon or great weapon. It's a no-brainer for me. I wouldn't pick any more Infernal Weapon Shield, despite the fact that I like the agility and the 3+ armor save. I mean, it's crazy. It's 18 points per model for that. No way I'm going to pay that. So definitely both other two options are good. And definitely this is a unit that you can rely on for the price. A bit more than 300, you get a good amount of high quality attack. So I think they are really decent as a special choice. Love the fact that you have a good advance, so you charge far away, you're scoring, fear. Yeah, definitely a good unit for me that I've been using quite a lot in the past, also because I have a lot of these models that I bought from Forge World, so I still need to paint a good amount of them and use them more. Vassal Cav, this is for me a big issue. No, but I know that one of the guidelines has been to make access to chaff very hard for the ID. So Vassal Chaff is in special. Vassal Cav has been raising price up to a point where you pay 40 points per model for the base starting cost of the unit. Would I pay a unit of 5 just to chaff? I don't think so. I haven't been doing that. What can he achieve in the book? It's better than light cav, than usual chaff, so I think the best way to play them would be 8. With or without the chieftain, you can debate. I think I would get the chieftain because it's still kind of scary on the charge. For me, the best way would have been to make the starting number of model higher, like 7 or 8, and then decrease the total price that would have been. Just to be concrete, to make like 8 of them 200 points. Because then still you pay a heavy price for chaff, but then you see that the purpose of the unit is not to be only a chaff, but it's mainly to be also a kind of a threat, mobile threat. The problem is when you pay 8 of them with a chieftain, it gets close to the price that you pay for 3 anointed or 3 incarnate or stuff that are just, yeah, if I want a mobile threat, obviously they can move much better than anointed. Okay, I agree on that. But anointed are not going to die to some bow shots or some pyro spell, which is the case for them. So I've never seen a way to fit them in my list. I don't know if some good player have success with such units, but I don't see really a role for them at the moment in our list as ID player. But that's just my opinion. So for me at the moment, it's just a no-go. Maybe I will force myself to try it because I like what it's given to us. I love that. On paper, if I don't see the points and just say Feint Flight, 816, Vanguard, Light Troop, a 4 armor save with a resilience 3, okay, it's still decent, defensive-wise. Lance, so 1 attack strength 5, 2 attack strength 3, it's not bad. The chieftain is like 3 attack strength 6, so it's not bad at all what we have. And the fact that you can move 16 laterally, it's the best lateral movement in our book. So it's definitely not bad what has been given to us. But it's just for the price to kit such a unit, I would just pick something else every day of the year. So yeah. Slingshot for me, it's just a no-go. Why would you pay that? It's for bolt thrower, it's too expensive. The big problem is it has oil flask. You can put up to 3 incendiary token, which is nice. But since you have access to incendiary from hereditary and core, why would you pay that so much points? So I would have rather preferred that they took that not maybe away because it's a flavor rule, but maybe move that down to, I don't know, 1 incendiary token if you hit, but not 1 marker for every hit, but then move down the points to 110 or 100. I think they would have been picked much more, but for me it's not something that you get really value for the points that you pay. Gunnery team, mixed feeling about that entry. I don't know. I think the Nafta thrower is the best choice out of them because you can be a threat with March 9 plus the short range 6, 15, still decent. You can be a threat to be within a unit that can use Raven Swing and then fly close and shoot at short range. So I think Nafta thrower would be my go-to Infernal Artillery, yeah, all 3 options are decent. I'm just not a player that pick a lot of shooting outside of core, so not so something that I would pick, but I think all 3 are quite decent. Like I mentioned before, the Bastion has Rise, but it's still maybe the most resilient unit in our book, basically. Unit of 20-ish blunderbuss with a Bastion. Still, there are very few things in the game that can go through this unit in one go. And this is especially what I was thinking about when talking about unit that can hold to pretty much everything. So I think just for that, it's still a good choice for the price. But yeah, it's 330 outside of your core, meaning if you pick that, it's 1 fighty unit less in your army. So you need to think twice. I think the balance is better. Internal balance wise, it's better than before. And yeah, let's finish with my it's just my favorite category. So I've been very disappointed when they moved that down to 25, but I think it makes sense. Monster Mash wasn't an intended playstyle for ID, maybe. That's something that the 9th Age team would say. So the Infernal Engine. Again, similar role to what the Bastion would do. And for me, with the new price of the Bastion, I think the Engine could be a very very good alternative to the Bastion or similar unit if you want redundancy in your list. But if you want something that can hold to a lot of the charges, res 7 health point, 3 up armor save and breakable model, it's kind of convincing. Weapon wise, I don't like too much such a piece that only fight in combat, but maybe that's due to my personal experience with it. I've been playing Rock Crusher again. I think it was the Outro last year. I haven't had too much success with it, so I would definitely go for either Nafta Thrower, like the one that I played during the Smesef Invitational. I found huge potential between the March 10, its March and Shoot, and also access to Raven's Wing. I think this can be maybe the strongest choice of the one that you can pick. And Rocket Battery, if you don't play Witchcraft and you need some tools against big target, I still think for 450 it's decent way to say think twice before moving in my range, basically. But I always love the pieces that can do something from range and also are good in combat, so that's why I kind of like Infernal Engine. I haven't played Dim a lot recently, but maybe since the Bastion went up, I might consider it slightly more. Kalim Titan, yeah, for me, we have it's one of our weakness. It's lateral mobility, and if you check in the book, you don't have many units that can move well laterally. Outside of character cowboys, you have basically Titan, you have the Vassal Cav, and you have so the Fighty Titan, Vassal Cav, and the Giant. So you don't have that many options to have unit that can move well on weak flank, where you need to sometimes do 14 to the right or 14 to the left. So just because of that, I think he has a unique role within the book, which I like a lot. I think for the price, it's an expensive monster, but it's a good monster. And personally, I prefer a very good fighty monster with a bigger price than him being less good in combat for a lower price. I think it was always going to be Titan. The Fighty Titan has some iconic image of being very good in combat. This was something historically in the book, and I love the fact that they kept that. So yeah, you need to think twice before putting him in the list, because it's 530 points, so it's a lot of points, but it's still a good monster for this amount of price. For me, the shooting version is just, if you compare with the engine, I would pick an engine every day, because the engine, it's unbreakable. This guy can break, basically. It's not break, but die. Supernal. So it's still quite resilient, but yeah, 3 attack and 1 volcanic. It can stomp, but against all the things that it cannot stomp, it doesn't do anything. So yeah, I've been missing a lot the old engine that has been on a bigger base and was also some kind of fighty. But for me, the shooty version of the Titan, for me, it's a no-go. It's a no-go. I don't see really the value here. So either they would continue, maybe we'll see if player try to pick that, but it's more or less for the same price. Just an afterthrow, it's slightly cheaper. Yeah, an afterthrow is slightly cheaper. But I don't see really why you would pick a Shooty Titan instead of the engine. So maybe you want to pick both. But then that's two models that can be blocked in combat, but pretty much anything that is not stompable. Because you just, yeah, for him, by pretty much everything, because you just grind D3 and have a couple of low strength attack, and him, if he cannot stomp, he will be blocked also by pretty much everything. So play both of the shooty version. I don't think that's an option at all. So yeah, I don't know, but I don't really see. For me, it's too similar to the engine, but just less good. Obviously, you can get flammable shooting, but I prefer non-flammable shooting that I can make flammable with stuff like Flaming Sword. So I don't really see the value here. And let's finish with the Giant. I think Giant is good. It's an expensive Giant, but there is a reason for that, and the reason being Infernal Armor and Infernal Brand. Infernal Brand gives some small bubble of leadership, sometimes helpful, like you saw in my last battle report, and a Giant with 3-up armor save. It's nice, it's really nice, because the main weakness of Giant is the fact that they have low armor, and he hasn't that. So you pay the price for that, but it's a good monster. And like I said before, we don't have many monsters that can move 14 to the side. So to my taste, in almost all of my list, there would be either a Giant or a fighty Kadim Titan. Could be supplemented by a Vizier on a small bull, but like I said, if you rely on him to hold the flank or be annoying in a flank in most of the game duration, you have a problem, because he could die easily, where Giant for the same price is much harder to kill. So that's it, guys. I hope it was quite long. I hope it was still interesting for you. I wanted to have another look, just also for myself, to analyze again, see a little bit the options. So I think the internal balance is not bad. Still, a couple options are for me, a couple of unit options are for me not interesting at all. But I think definitely the main playstyle of the book are still all viable. That's my opinion. So according to your taste and what you like to play, I still think that you have still decent option to play all type of playstyle with the book that were intended since the design. So that's everything. Don't hesitate if you have any question or you have some other opinion that you want to share. Don't hesitate to post them in comment section. That's also the purpose of this type of video, is also to open a little bit the discussion around some of the options. Maybe you will open my eyes on some stuff that I haven't seen or that I haven't considered due to lack of testing. I haven't tested all the options in the detail, so it's possible that I say something is shitty on paper, but that's not the case at all. I would be very happy to be surprised like that, but I'm not sure. We'll see. Thanks a lot, guys, for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and talk to you soon on the channel. Bye bye.